offer up 3 ideas today. So another one that you want to talk about is an upcoming IPO, a potential alternative to NVIDIA, which should get everyone's hearts beating a little bit faster. So let's talk about what you're looking at in the potential pre-IPO space in AI right now.
Well, everybody loves NVIDIA. Every time you say NVIDIA, somebody smiles thinking about how much money they made off of this stock over the last decade, right? Eric, you're smiling right now. I know you know how this feels. I mean,
yeah.
One of the darlings of the stock, and why? Because it's creating a lot of value that is just being used and is almost a must-have. And there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, our chips are better than NVIDIA's," because if you say that, you can add 3 or 4 more zeros to the valuation you ask a venture capitalist for. But one that really might be doing it is called Cerebras Systems. This is a company that is expected to IPO here in 2025, early 2025. Not publicly traded right now. We're just speculating that this is going to be publicly traded here very soon. They filed all the paperwork and are probably going to do it here within the next couple of months. But this is a company that says, AI is transformative, right? And it wants to create the chips that are as efficient as possible for machine learning inference. Right? You got the training, you have to have a car recognize what a stop sign is. You have to teach the car what that is, but then you actually have to have the car respond to that on the inference side of it, the understanding piece of the computing that's related to AI. And Cerebras has built these massive wafer scale engines, is what they call them. I mean, the chips are this big.
Yep.
They're massive. If you see a picture of Cerebras's chips are just massive. And they're going to be competing against NVIDIA's GPUs that have got 50 times more computing cores, 880 times more on-chip memory, and 7,000 times more memory bandwidth. 57 times larger than the commercially available GPUs today. Why is that important? Well, because if you are building a neural network that is going to be using machine learning inference for really, really hard things, you want to have your computing as efficient as possible. The number of trillions of operations that you can do per second, the teraflops per second, compared to the power that you are using, that you are putting into the servers to do these things, you have to have that efficient because these are just so power hungry out there right now. And I think Cerebras, if it can actually go out there and show that, it's claiming that it's an order of magnitude more efficient than GPUs, 10 times more efficient. I think that you're going to start seeing some of the big data centers who are doing AI computing, the infrastructure as a service providers, the Microsofts and the Googles of the world, but then also those that are building their own data centers, like the Meta platforms and what have you. They're going to start winning some really, really big contracts. And so I just think Cerebras, we don't know as much about them as we know about NVIDIA. They're new. There's a lot of questions about this stock and this company, but my goodness, what a great place and a great time to do an IPO. They're right in the middle of the hottest market trend in the entire world right now. Yeah,
I think there's no question demand's going to be very amplified for this. It's funny, I've gotten the question from people before, why cut up these wafers into these tiny chips? You're trying to cram transistors. I'm like, well, there's a company trying to do the alternative, and it's what you're describing. It's a radical departure from kind of how the entire chip industry has been built. One question though, Simon, I guess, where'd you see the opportunity here in the sense we've got NVIDIA on one side, but it feels like a lot of these hyperscalers that control so much of the demand, they've really placed their bets on their own custom chips as an alternative. We've got Trainium from Amazon. We've got TPUs from Google. So where is the market? Because when I looked at Cerebras's filing, their S1, they currently have basically one customer, which is a quasi sovereign company from the Middle East. So where do you see maybe demand coming from in the next year or two? Who would buy these chips?
Yeah, it's super expensive to even do this. Like even the R&D of developing your own chip, just the design, $30 million per chip, right? So a lot of companies don't even have the trained staff or the scientists or the R&D budget to even spend on things like that. And they got Microsoft, in addition to all the great names you just mentioned that are developing, Microsoft is the next one that's going to go out there and has already been working on its own custom AI chip, is going to spend $10 billion on manufacturing, design, and then all of the operating expenses to do something like that. I mean, if you don't have $10 billion sitting around to commit to something of this magnitude like the hyperscalers do, you're going to look for the next best thing that's out there that's available. And when we're talking about, orders of magnitude between $10 billion that Microsoft alone is spending, Cerebras last year in fiscal 2023 did $78 million in revenue, total revenue. So there is certainly a delta between the two of those, but could you triple that revenue again? Just like they tripled their revenue in 2023, going to triple again in 2024 and be on lines, $200 million, maybe $1 billion a year, maybe even up to, $3 or $4 billion. Yes, I think there's certainly, 10x potential for a company like this, given that the mass market doesn't have the resources of the hyperscalers like you just mentioned.
Yeah, and I guess, that's a good point in the sense that one kind of a medium-sized customer could result in a tripling, and all of a sudden you're way have consensus, and there's rabid demand for shares. So if you were an investor out there, we haven't talked about this particular company on the podcast. I'll probably do a little bit more as it comes closer to the market. But if you were sizing this, how'd you size it in a portfolio? Is this kind of a 1% hedge against this, making some room against a larger company like NVIDIA? Would you actually be a little bit more aggressive in it? How would you fit this in kind of a portfolio strategy, adding to AI stocks?
Currently, I have Cerebras on our watch list of new ideas for Seven Investing. That's kind of obvious because it's not publicly tradable anyway. Yep. But these are kind of companies that I think are interesting, but I'm still playing a wait and see approach to it. Generally, you don't want to buy in an IPO. The reason companies IPO when they do is because typically the market is hot. There's a lot of demand that they can showcase, the people that want to invest. And out of the gate, they're able to raise as much money at as high of a valuation as possible. And typically that kind of comes back down to earth over the following 6 months. There's also lockup periods and things associated with that. But generally, I would not recommend buying right at the IPO and having to get into the hottest thing at the time. There's expectations built into stock prices all the time. I still am saying a wait and see, but certainly an interesting company to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I did notice in their S1, there's a release clause that insiders can get out within 5 days if the stock is up 25%. So again, I think we'll talk about this more on this podcast after it's come to the market, but a good reason to maybe there's going to be a lot of demand for it, but also the devil's in the details a lot of times with these companies coming to market. So let's talk about the last stock here. This is a stock that we've talked about quite a bit on this podcast. I still haven't added it to the portfolio.